Comrades and friends, welcome to the program Global Weekly News, serial number 205. First item, 20 farmers massacred in Honduras. On 21st May, at least 20 people were massacred in a village in Honduras. The victims were killed on an African palm plantation where they worked. As the workers were preparing to begin their workday and were praying, the killings occurred. At that time, several heavily armed men wearing Honduran police uniform opened fire on the workers. President Nasri Aspura said in a message, "This will not be forgotten and it will not go unpunished." He said that Ministry of Security, the National Police, the Armed Forces, the Police Investigation Directorate, all of which will conduct investigations on the killings. The peasants' struggle to secure a plot of land to farm in that area has been met with violent response from armed groups. The social organization La Via Campesina. This is an international organization of peasants and agricultural workers and indigenous people. La Via Campesina strongly condemned the brutal act. As per some reports, nearly 200 people have died in the context of the agrarian conflict in the area. In a statement by La Via Campesina, it said that the violence cannot continue. Impunity in Honduras cannot continue. The struggle for land is legitimate. The land belongs to those who work it. The peasant struggle does not stop. Hours after the massacre of farmers, 5 police officers were killed in Corinto. Police raid was seeking to locate the leader of a criminal gang involved in drug trafficking in the area. When the police entered, they found themselves outnumbered, so they were captured and then executed. The raid was widely criticized due to the lack of intelligence prior to the operation, which forced the ministry to suspend some officers. Honduras is a country with a high rate of violence. Due to violence, 23 homicides per 1 lakh inhabitants take place. Second item, comrades. US launches fresh attacks on Iran. In violation of ceasefire deal on 8th April, US launched attacks on southern Iranian territory, targeting missile launch systems and Iranian boats. US tried to justify the attacks as an attempt to neutralize alleged threats to its forces in the region from Iranian military positions. In response, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps claimed it retaliated by launching an attack on one of the US vessels in the region and shooting down a US Reaper drone. The Iranian military also claimed it forced an intruding F-35 and another hostile drone to retreat. Pakistan mediated peace talks with Iran have now shifted to Qatar. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and the head of its central bank are also part of the delegation. Iran denied a deal with the US is imminent given the trust deficit towards the Trump administration. You cannot believe Trump administration that it will come to a fair deal so soon and all that. Head of the Iranian Parliamentary Commission on National Security and Foreign Policy reiterated that the US needs to take confidence building measures on 5 core issues before any deal is finished. He identified a ceasefire on all fronts with a guarantee of no future attacks, lifting the naval blockade, acceptance of Iranian control over the Strait of Hormuz, the suspension of sanctions, and the release of Iran's blocked assets as 5 core confidence building measures for any possible deal. Trump appealed to countries in the region and beyond to join the Abraham Accords as part of the deal with Iran. Abraham Accords is an accord four Arab countries signed with Israel to have normal relations. That is Abraham Accords, signed some years ago. Trump identified Saudi Arabia and Qatar as priority states to sign the accord. Despite successive US administrations pushing for it, only four countries, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco, have signed the deal so far. Item number 3, comrades. Marco Rubio's India visit. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio visited India on May 23 to 26. This is his first visit to India since he assumed office as Secretary of State last year. The objective of Rubio's visit to India was to intensify the country's strategic relationship and push for increased trade in energy in the context of the ongoing war in West Asia and the continued blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Just before leaving for India, Marco Rubio claimed that the US has enough production of its own and is ready to sell to India as much energy as they will buy. Rubio met Prime Minister Modi on 23rd May and met S. Jaishankar, India's Minister of External Affairs, on 24th May. Modi tweeted after meeting with Rubio, "We discussed sustained progress in the India-US Comprehensive Global Strategic Partnership and issues related to regional and global peace and security." Jaishankar admitted the need to diversify the sources of its energy supply without explicitly committing to buying more US oil. Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, was founded for the second time in 2017. Apart from the US and India, the grouping also includes Japan and Australia and is largely seen as an anti-China grouping with an objective to contain its rise in the Indo-Pacific region. The inability of the Narendra Modi government to decide a clear path in its foreign policy has caused strains in India's relations with China. The political opposition in India has described India's approach as capitulation, surrender to US interests. They have questioned the failure of the state to defy US dictates of not buying oil from Russia or Iran, which is relatively cheaper and easier to transport than oil brought from the United States. Before commencing his visit to India, Marco Rubio announced the visit of Delcy Rodriguez, Venezuela's interim president, to India later this week. Neither India nor Venezuela has made any such announcement about Rodriguez's visit yet. Modi government agreed to buy $50,000 crore worth of US goods in the next 5 years as per the deal. This would mean doubling yearly imports from the US, which is just about $5,000 crore at the moment per year. India's left parties and major farmer unions have already rejected the logic of the trade deal, calling it surrender, capitulation, and demanding the country withdraw from it. Comrades and friends, now we go to Africa. May 25th, African Liberation Day. On 25th May, progressive movements, socialist organizations, cooperatives, students, artists, and Pan-Africanist formations across Africa commemorated Africa Liberation Day with renewed calls for sovereignty, continental unity, and resistance against imperialism. The commemorations took place in various countries, including Kenya and Tanzania, while in Ghana, the Socialist Movement of Ghana released a statement marking the occasion. The Pan-Africanism Today statement, today, 25th May 2026, on Africa Liberation Day, we honor the true origins of Africa Liberation Day as one of the most historic reference points in our shared struggle. Since that first meeting on 25th May 1963 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopian capital, this day has represented more than commemoration. It embodies the aspirations of 150 crore African people on the continent and in the diaspora to claim full emancipation from all forms of oppression and exploitation. One decisive political question facing Africa is the question of defense of sovereignty. The statement called for the building of a broad united front against imperialism alongside the development of a disciplinary revolutionary vanguard capable of leading socialist transformation across Africa. This year marked the 63rd commemoration of Africa Liberation Day, a day rooted in anti-colonial struggle and the fight for continental unity. In 1958, Kwame Nkrumah, he was the president of Ghana, convened the first conference of independent African states in Accra, capital of Ghana, where Africa Freedom Day was declared as a symbol of African people's determination to end colonial domination and exploitation. Later on, 25th May 1963, African heads of states established the Organization of African Unity (OAU) in Addis Ababa and officially renamed the commemoration Africa Liberation Day. Instead of Africa Freedom Day, now it is called as Africa Liberation Day. Africa's liberation remains incomplete without economic sovereignty, political self-determination, and people-centered power rooted in the struggles of workers, peasants, youth, and oppressed communities. In Kenya, social justice movements, socialist organizations, and left movements gathered under the theme Towards Sovereignty, Africa's Struggle Against Imperialism. The gathering reflected a continued commitment to linking African liberation with everyday struggles against inequality, exploitation, and neo-colonial domination. The ambassador of Cuba to Kenya was also present. Participants also expressed solidarity with the peoples resisting imperialist aggression in Sudan, Congo, Palestine, Cuba, Venezuela, and the Sahel region. Organizations argued that liberation must include access to food, housing, healthcare, education, and dignified livelihoods. The statement from the socialist movement of Ghana declared the founding vision of a continental unity was born from anti colonial struggles. Political independence without economic sovereignty would leave Africa vulnerable to exploitation by imperial powers, multinational corporations, and local elites aligned with foreign interests. A major focus of the statement was its rejection of xenophobia and anti migrant violence in South Africa. The Tanzanian gathering reaffirmed solidarity with Palestine, Cuba, Venezuela, Sudan, Congo, Haiti, describing international solidarity not as a charity but as a strategic necessity within a global struggle against a common enemy. Comrades and friends, now again we are in Africa. Fifth item, Burkina Faso asserts financial independence. Historically, the mining industry in Burkina Faso was foreign owned. Only one industrial mine was domestically owned by a former minister, the Assis private company. The regime of Roch Kabor, propped up by its former colonizer France, was ousted in a popularly supported military coup in 2022 amidst anti-France protests. Led by Captain Ibrahim Traore, the present military government expelled French troops from Burkina Faso. He consolidated power later that year with the backing of the protest movement, trade unions, and other progressive civil society groups. By the end of 15 industrial mines, 6 were majority Burkina owned. By the end of 2025, 15 out of industrial 15 mines, 6 were majority Burkina owned. These 6 amount to 40% of mining operations. The state's direct mining revenues, around 93 crores in 2023, rose to 134 crores by the end of 2025. Using this revenue, the government repaid almost a quarter of its domestic debt. On 21st May, Burkina Faso Sovereign Mining Investment Fund was established. This will be financed by surpluses generated when international mineral prices, especially gold, which accounts for over 80% of the country's export revenues, rise above the benchmark set by the Burkina Faso state government. This fund will be allocated for building long-term infrastructure and industries. Lastly, comrades, item number 6, we go to Italy. 15,000 demonstrate in Italy. 15,000 people join a new demonstration on 23rd May, mobilizing against the rearmament and the war economy, demanding a national industrial strategy that addresses the people's needs. The demonstrators reaffirmed solidarity with the people of Palestine, Cuba, and others affected by the ongoing war drive led by the West. Italy's trade union, USB, described that those who generate the country's wealth must once again have a say in shaping industrial policy. A report by the National Statistics Institute, ISTAT, says that 1.1 crore people are at risk of poverty, while 57 lakhs people already live in absolute poverty. 1 in 4 people would not know how to address the unexpected expenses. The only policy that government pursue, whether it is Giorgia Meloni's present government, or the centrist left in the past, is to allow large corporations and multinational corporations to come here, take vast amounts of public money, incentives, subsidies, aid, etc. They came to Italy, take the money, shut down, leave, lay off workers, and leave everything in ruins. The left party is campaigning for wages of $14 per hour of work, $14, to ensure that workers can make ends meet. Additionally, the left party and grassroots trade unions have insisted on taxing the extremely wealthy people and upholding workers' demands in the international arena, starting with severing disconnecting ties with Israel in response to the genocide in Gaza and offering concrete support to Cuba in the face of ongoing US assaults. Thank you, comrades. Lal Salam. See you next week.